Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Simone here, and today I have another mental health related video, and this one is the mental health books I really want to read. So as you all know, it's mentalhealth-athon right now, and I am really excited because there are so many more mental health books that I have become aware of because of this mental health-athon, and I feel like I just wanted to talk about some books that I still really want to read that I haven't managed to read obviously this time and aren't on my TBR right now, but I do still really want to get to them. I have 10 to talk about, and the first one is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Now, I'm not really sure exactly what mental health representation this has, however I've been told quite a few times that it does, so I'm assuming it does. This is a book that I've heard really very mixed things about. I feel like some people give this a 1 star and some people give this a 5 star, and I'm really interested to see where I sit with it. I am very intrigued. I have another one of E. Lockhart's books. I don't know, I have it on my Kindle, I know that much, and I'm intrigued. I haven't read anything by this author. As far as I know, this follows a very rich family who owns an island, and on this island I think there's 4 houses. There's one for the parents and one for each of the 3 sisters, I think, 3 daughters. And each one of the daughters has married and has their own children, and I believe it follows the Liars, and the Liars are the 4 oldest cousins, so I believe it's the daughters' children, and then something very dramatic happens, and I think it's kind of about what happens. Again, I don't really know anything about the plot of this, and I feel like even the synopsis doesn't really say. I'm intrigued by it a lot. I'm really wanting to read this one. I'm fascinated, and I really just want to know if I'm going to love it or hate it. Next one I really want to read is called The Quiet Room, and the tagline is A Journey Out of the Torment of Madness, and this is by Laurie Schiller, or Skiller, I think it's Schiller. Laurie Schiller has written a memoir basically about her life and dealing with schizophrenia. I believe up until the age of 17, Laurie Schiller was kind of like the poster child, I guess, for a really affluent family. She had a great relationship with her family, she was doing really well at school, etc. At the age of 17, I believe she made her first suicide attempt, and then it went from there. She was in halfway houses and had lots of different doctors, and her family suffered, and I think it's kind of about her looking back on that time. I also believe that there is an edition, the one I would like to get, the edition of the book where she's actually added a bit on the end which talks about what's happened to her since the publication of the book and how she's dealt with it and how like terrifying it's been, etc. So yeah, I really want to get that edition because I think it could be really, really interesting to see how this memoir has changed her life in potentially good and bad ways. I also would love to read more about schizophrenia, to be honest. In my learn more prompt, I chose bipolar disorder this time, but I think if next year the mental health-athon runs again, I would definitely love to read more about schizophrenia. And to be honest, I'll read it throughout anyway, whether it's during mental health-athon or not. So then the third one that I really want to read is called A Semi-Definitive List of Worst Nightmares by Crystal Sutherland. This is a YA contemporary that I haven't really heard anybody talking about. This follows a girl named S the Solar, whose family since her grandfather met death, her entire family has been doomed to suffer one great fear in their lifetime, and this fear will eventually lead them to their death. So her father is an agoraphobe who hasn't left his basement in 6 years. Her brother has a massive fear of the dark, and her mother has a fear of bad luck. And she so far has not been cursed with with a fear or a phobia at all yet. But basically it's because she has not allowed herself to do anything that would potentially cause her to have a fear. She avoids any kind of triggers, anything at all, and then she writes them in a list she writes a list of them basically, until one day she meets a boy named Jonah Smallwood, and the encounter that she has with him leads her to be stranded at a bus stop with all of her possessions gone, including the list, and she then has to try and deal with her phobias alongside him, and I think it's kind of like a romance as well. I'm really intrigued by this. I think that YA contemporary is often the place where mental health books tend to be written, and I think that sometimes they can be good and sometimes they can be bad. I'm hoping this is a good one. I'm very intrigued by them and I would love to read it. I think it would be it's definitely an interesting concept. The next one is a non-fiction psychology book, and this one is Anatomy of an Epidemic Epidemic, Magic Bullets, Psychiatric Drugs and the Astonishing Rise of Mental Illness in America, and this is written by Robert Whitaker. I do love a non-fiction about mental health. It's one of my favourite types of mental health books to read. I've read a lot of them so far for mental health-athon this year, but this one, although it's about America, and obviously I don't live in America, I find them fascinating to read about kind of real life and how mental health is dealt with in our lifetime, I guess. And one of the things that I really am interested in is the increase in the disabled mentally ill. So this book basically talks about the fact that the number of disabled mentally ill people in America has, I believe, tripled over the past 2 decades, and why that is, and he, I guess, explores that in this book, and I'm really intrigued to read this one. I'd love to know if there's one that's been written about the UK as well, just because I think that would be really fascinating to read. But either way, I'm really wanting to pick this one up, and yeah, it sounds interesting, and I love psychology and mental health like non-fiction as well. Next up is a book by an author I own a book of, but I don't actually own this one, and that is She's Come Undone by Wally Lamb. I Know This Much Is True by Wally Lamb, and I do really want to read that one as well. That one follows a pair of twins, one of which is schizophrenic, and it's about them dealing with it, and obviously that is also on this list. However, I really want to read She's Come Undone because it follows a 13-year-old girl named Dolores Price, who I believe something happens to her at the age of 13. I don't really know what it is, but because of that she is then thrown into a world where she essentially has comfort eating, I believe, is a massive part of her life, and at the age of, well, it just says when she orbits into young womanhood at 257 pounds, she's no stronger and life is no kinder, but this time she's determined to rise to the occasion and give herself one more chance. I always find it really interesting to read about plus size main characters and about how they mental health has potentially affected certain things, and yeah, I just think it will be a really interesting one. I think it's going to be a really tough read, but I have heard great things about Wally Lamb, and I still need to read a book by them. Next up is a book that I mentioned a few years ago as one I wanted to read, and I don't know, it's been shelved on Goodreads as having mental health representation, and I don't know if it actually does, but I'm going to include it because it says it does on Goodreads, but you can let me know if I'm wrong. It's The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr, and this book is one that I'm interested in because I really love reading books about people or main characters with amnesia. So again, I don't know if they're counting that as the mental health thing, because obviously that's slightly different potentially. I don't know if there's other mental health elements to it. This basically follows a girl named Flora who has anterograde amnesia, so she can't remember anything day to day. So I guess every day she wakes up she's forgotten what's happened before, and then one day she kisses someone she shouldn't, and the next day she remembers it, and I think she's then trying to figure out who this boy is, why she can remember this, seeing as it's the first thing she's remembered since she was 10 years old. And yeah, I'm interested by it. I really enjoyed like Before I Go to Sleep and Remember Me by Sophie Kinsella, so I'm hoping that this is another one in the same lines, but again, I don't know if this is actually an amnesia and they're counting amnesia as mental health, because I don't think that I would potentially put the two together. Maybe, I don't know. Would you count amnesia as mental health-athon like material? I don't know. I'm a bit confused by the whole thing. Next up is the first book in a series, and that is Pushing the Limits by Katie McGarry. Again, this isn't one I've heard loads about. It's a YA contemporary, so it's not generally something I would like gravitate towards, but I've heard it has good mental health representation. I obviously don't know myself. As far as I know, this follows a girl named Echo Emerson who has went from being a kind of very popular girl with a kind of really popular boyfriend, and they had kind of like the it couple status, I guess, at school, and then the next day she is seen as the kind of freaky outsider who has scars on her arms, and nobody knows what happened, and there is no explanation to what happened, and I don't really know. And then it's about her relationship with a boy named Noah, who is like a loner who nobody really it says he's the smoking hot girl using loner in the black leather jacket with a tough attitude and surprising understanding. And I guess it's about them. They shouldn't really have anything in common, but they do. And yeah, I'm interested by this one. Again, I find it interesting how people put romance around mental health issues, and I really hope that this isn't one of those like the boy saves the day. But yeah, well, I'm interested in, but definitely I feel like this is quite a popular series. It has quite a good rating on Goodreads, but I'm not really a romance reader, so yeah, it would be interesting to see how I feel about this one. Next up, I have a memoir that is called Electro Boy, a Memoir of Mania by Andrew Behrman, I think it's pronounced. This is exactly what it says on the tin. This is a memoir of Andy Behrman, who has suffered from manic depression. He's always been a very kind of open, he's always been a very kind of out there, big personality, and he's kind of hid his true kind of like depressive or mania, I guess, from people. And I think this is about him talking about that and how he got help. I think I don't really know too much about it, but again, manic depression is not something I've read so much about. I feel like you hear it and you think mania, and it's kind of it's a buzzword for like that it turns people off to it, I think. So I'm really interested by it. I think it's another one that I'm interested to learn more about, and definitely a book that I would like to read. Then the penultimate one is a graphic novel. This is called Rocksteady, Brilliant Advice from My Bipolar Life by Ellen Forney. And I believe this has a kind of memoir, graphic novel, non-fiction psychology, kind of that style of book. This follows, I believe, as far as I know, this is actually this companion book to another book that she wrote called Marbles, Mania, Depression, Michelangelo and Me. And this is more... So apparently the first one, Marbles, which I'm also really interested in reading, is actually a memoir, and that is more about her personal bipolar disorder and how she dealt with it. Rocksteady is more of a kind of self-help guide, apparently, of like things, but I guess it's still that graphic novel style, which I'm definitely intrigued by. Again, I read Wishful Drinking by Carrie Fisher for mentalhealth-athon because I wanted to learn more about my bipolar, and so this definitely sounds like maybe a duology that I would really want to read and continue learning about, because it sounds interesting. I've never read a graphic novel as like a self-help book before, and I think that could be really interesting. Like the format of that, but yeah, I'm really intrigued by this one and definitely want to give it a read. And then the final one that I have on this list is another graphic novel, and this is Arya My Mother by Alison Bechdel. I believe Alison Bechdel had done another book in the past called Fun Home, where she talks about the fact that her mother was married to her father, who her father was gay, and her mother didn't know that, and it was about their separation and lots of other things that have happened to her throughout her life. I believe that one was more about her dad. This one is more about her mother. This talks about the fact that at the age of 7 her mum stopped kissing her and stopped touching her, stopped hugging her, and I think it's about their relationship, and this is more to do with that side of things. Again, I don't know too much. I also know that I believe, as far as I know as well, this is what I guess is called a therapy memoir. So this is a graphic novel, but it has bits in it from Alison's therapist and her dealing with things. So I've heard very mixed things. When I was reading the reviews on Goodreads, there was some very positive reviews, and there's also some very negative ones, so I'm very intrigued to find out kind of why that is the case and if I enjoy it or not. I think as well people have said it's very, very different than any of the other books that she's written, and perhaps she doesn't come across in a very nice way in this book, but I guess that might be kind of the point of it. I don't really know. I'm really, really interested by this one. I'm absolutely buzzing to read it. But yeah, all of these 10 are books that are on my TBR and I'd love to read. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of them and if you want to read any of them and what you're interested in. Let me know if you've read any of them as well. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I shall see you next time for another video. Bye guys, stay safe.